Hey everybody, Melon here. Welcome back to another teardown video. Today we are going to be tearing apart the VANCER groove. Now, as I mentioned in my full review, there is one little bit of an oddity with this mouse that does make it kind of difficult to tear down and repair when it comes to the ribbon cable for the side buttons. But today I'm going to be showing you guys how to take this mouse apart, and we're actually going around that entire ribbon cable situation so you can take it apart and put it back together without damaging your unit. Now, as always, for any teardown, you will need two things. You will need somebody to keep track of your screws. I like to use an ice cube tray, and you will also need a precision screwdriver set. Now, you will need a couple unique pieces for the groove here, so having a full-size set is recommended. All right, now you are going to need a couple bits to do this teardown. So you're going to need a relatively small size star head screw, a medium sized one. Then you are also going to need a flat piece here, which is something we don't normally need for teardowns, but I will explain why you need this in a minute. So make sure you set aside these bits because we will need these later in this teardown video. But once you have those set aside, we can get started. Now, the first thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to remove these stock skates on the unit to get access to these 2-axis screws here and the 2-axis screws here up at the top. Now, normally on mice, there's only 2 at the bottom, but with the groove, there is a total of 4 because there's 2 on the top and 2 on the bottom. This does make the mouse a lot more rigid, which is a good thing, but it does kind of suck in terms of repairability because you have to take off both of the stock skates. But as I mentioned in my full review, the stock skates kind of suck anyways, so it's not the biggest of deal. You're probably going to replace them with something else, but just keep in mind you will need to take off both the bottom and the top set if you want to open this unit up. All right, so to start off, we are going to go ahead and take our medium star screwdriver set here, and we're going to go remove the 4 base screws on the bottom of this unit. Now, generally speaking, when we're opening a mouse, I generally say just put a little bit of pressure here, and it will open up the back of the mouse. However, as you can see, the back of this mouse does not open. Now, the reason for that is that there is actually a clip on the inside of this mouse that we need to release in order to get the back shell open. This is kind of similar to what we saw on the Sprime PM1 and the Sora V2, but a little different. So what you want to do is you want to take your flathead, you want to put it into this little hole here, you want to put it in towards the bottom. Once it hits the bottom, you just want to pull it up like this, and you can see at the back of the mouse cracks open a little bit, and then you can add a little pressure onto the sides and the back of the mouse will crack open, and then you can get your fingernail in there and you can run that along the side of the mouse to release the clips. There is a clip here and there also is a clip on this side as well. And once that's done, you can open up your groove. Now, once you get it open, there is a ribbon cable here connected to the side button PCB, so don't rip your shells off. What you want to do is you want to go ahead and fold it over to this side, just gently open it up like this. And once you get it open, you want to grab both sides of this ribbon cable from the top and just gently wiggle it out just like this. Make sure you hold it like this. Don't hold it like this, you're going to damage the cable, and just pull it straight out. And there you go, you have your top shell and your bottom shell off for the groove. Now let's go ahead and do the top shell first, and then we'll talk about the bottom shell after. Now, in terms of the top shell, there really isn't anything too fancy here. We're going to start off by removing the side button PCB by removing the screw here, here, and here. And then once you have those screws removed, you can grab it by here and just lift it out off of its standoffs, and you can pull the side PCB out here. So here we have the pillar switch for the DPI button on the top of the shell, and then here you have your WANA white dot switches for the side buttons. We'll put this off to the side for now. Now, in regards to the rest of the shell, there is this very unique kind of feature here where there are these 2 little clip bits here. Now, this is responsible for holding in the housing for the DPI button up at the top here. As you can see here, this is using these very odd little clip pieces. Now, because of these clip pieces, I'm worried about them breaking, so I'm actually not going to take the DPI out button for this teardown just because I have a feeling these plastic bits are not going to take too kindly to being removed. So I'm going to leave this intact. I will remove the side buttons and the main buttons as usual, but I would advise leaving this intact unless you absolutely have to take it out. Now, next up, we're going to go ahead and we're going to remove our side buttons. Now, this is pretty straightforward. All you're going to do is just put 2 fingers on the side buttons to push them into the shell, and these buttons are actually in by a push connector. So what you want to do is you want to get your fingernail under here, and you want to just gently pull from the sides of the mouse, and that will pull them off of their little housings, and you can take the side buttons out just like that. You do have to put a fair amount of pressure to get them off of their mounts on the side here, but it's nothing too serious. Next up, we can go ahead and remove the main click, so we'll have to remove a screw here and a screw here. And then once you have those screws out, just like all the other main clicks we've taken apart before, you want to take your finger and just go under, and you can pull the clicks out and they will just naturally fall out of the shell, just like that. So that is how you remove the main clicks. We'll put those to the side for now. Alrighty, and then once the main clicks are all you're left here with, this is the DPI button, as I mentioned before. Again, I would not recommend removing this piece unless you absolutely have to, because I don't really trust these plastic clips, so I'm going to leave that intact for here. But we can see the click design structure on the inside, which is very cool. Also, one thing that is a really nice attention to detail is that the stabilizers for the main clicks are actually pre-lubed, which is a really nice thing to see. So you have your regular click tabs here, and then you also have an extra set of stabilizers here, which is a really, really cool attention to detail. The only other mouse I've seen machine that has pre-lubed stabilizers is the Death Adder V3. So this is a really cool attention to detail here on the groove. But that is everything for the top shell of the groove. Let's go ahead and do the main board next. Now, the first thing you're going to notice here is that this has a battery brace, which is something I haven't seen on too many mice before. This is a rather unique feature. Generally speaking, brands just have adhesive on the bottom and they just hope that's going to hold the mouse in place. But this is nice to see that there's like a buffer in case the mouse gets dropped or something like that. It's going to keep the battery in place, which is a nice attention to detail. So we're going to go ahead and remove that first, but first we're going to go ahead and remove our battery. So you can do so by just grabbing both sides of this little connector here, and you just want to get your fingernails under and just pull straight up just like that, and it will come off. And then next we're going to remove the 2 screws holding in this battery connector. There's one here and one here. Now the battery still isn't removable because there is adhesive on the bottom, so I'm going to leave it in the shell for this video, but just wanted to show you how to get rid of that piece. Now next up we can go ahead and remove the main board. So there are 3 screws here. We're going to remove a screw here, and there's one other right here. I'd recommend swapping to your smaller bit for these ones just because the screws are rather tiny. All right, now once those are removed, you can go ahead and remove the main board. Now, just like a lot of other boards, you have to be careful because there are stabilizers here for the scroll wheel, so I have to pull this straight up. So I like to grab by the side of the switches and just gently pull straight up, and the entire board will come off in one piece like this. Now, you can take the scroll wheel out by just pulling it from the side here and just swapping it out of the encoder, and it comes off very easily. So you can just put that off to the side. But that is everything for the base and the top shell of the VANCER groove. Let's go ahead and start the reassembly process. Now, of course, we're going to start with the main board here. So first off, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and put our scroll wheel back in. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the smaller end of our scroll wheel, and then we're just going to gently line it up and slide it in just like that. And if it doesn't go in, don't force it in, it will just naturally slide in. Now, before you move on, just make sure that this still scrolls and make sure you can still actuate the click here just to make sure you didn't put it in correctly, and you should be good to go. Now, before we put the main board back into the shell, a quick note I did want to make here. There is a tiny little on and off switch on the bottom of this here that corresponds to this on and off connector here. So make sure that this is set into the off position, because if you have this in the on position or this in the off position, or they're alternating, you can break this tiny little bit of piece of plastic, and if you break that, your mouse is pretty much DOA. So make sure you have this and this set to the same setting. All right, now next up we can go ahead and put the main board back into the base. So we're going to do this by just basically just putting this right on top just like this and just letting it naturally fall into place. Give it a quick little shimmy and you'll feel it kind of sit into place, and you can tell it's into place where the plastic will meet kind of the level of the board here. If it's all the same on all the buttons, the board has successfully been put back into place. You can also check by checking to see if your charging port is lined up, which it is in our case, so we are good to go. So we can go ahead and put back in those 3 screws that are anchoring the board in. All right, so once those are reseated, you just double check to make sure the board isn't shifting, make sure it's mounted properly. If it doesn't shift at all, you are good to go. And then next up, we can just reconnect the battery. We can do this by just taking this little plastic connector and reseating it into this housing and just gently go put it into place, and then take 2 of your fingernails and press from the sides, and you want to press in. Just like all these connectors, never push on top because you can damage the cables. Always push from the sides of the connector. All right, and then lastly, we can go ahead and put this little battery brace back on. So we can just line this up over the 2 little standoffs here, and then we can just screw that in. And there you go, it is all connected. So that is everything for the main board of the groove. Let's go ahead and reassemble the top shell next. Alrighty, so there are a lot of pieces for the top shell. The top shell is definitely the harder part of this repair. So let's go ahead by doing the main clicks first. Now the main clicks, just like all main clicks, all you have to do to get them inside is you take the end part of this board, you want to slide it into the top of the shell like this. Make sure that the stabilizer on the inside here lines up with its connectors, and just give it a little bit of a wiggle. You should be able to get it into place and it should slide in. Once this is loosely inside, it'll be a little looser. You want to line this up over the little standoffs here, and you just want to press down to loosely put it into place. So we'll do the same thing for these clicks here. Put them in through the bottom, line up these stabilizers over on the top, and just gently press down to click them into place, and you are set. Now we can go ahead and put back in the anchoring screws. However, there is a very important note to make here before we do that. With the screws here, you have to be extremely careful not to over tension them. If you over tension the anchoring screws, you will break your main clicks because they will lose their natural rebound. So it's very, very important that you do these properly and don't over tension them. So be very careful when you're putting these screws back in. The moment you feel any kind of resistance, stop screwing. Now, once that's done, you can double check to make sure your main clicks are okay. You'll see how they're naturally kind of floating at the top here. That's what you want. You want them to have a bit of a natural rebound. If they're sitting at the bottom, you've under tightened them. And if they're all the way up and you can't push them down, you've over tightened them. So just again, make sure you don't over tighten them. The moment you feel any kind of resistance from these screws, you can stop screwing. Next up, we'll go ahead and put back in these side buttons. Now this is again pretty easy. All you do is put it into the side of the mouse like this. You want to line it up with these sides here, and you just want to press on the top here where those two connectors are, and that will anchor your side buttons back into place. Very, very, very simple. Now normally I would say, okay, now you can go ahead and put in the side button PCB into the top of the shell. However, this is a little finicky on this mouse. We're actually going to do this a little differently, because on the main board here you can see there is this little connector here. Now, as I talked in my full review, this is a push ribbon connector, meaning that this is not going to work like a clip connector where you put the piece in, then you clip it on. You have to force this end of this connector into this spot on the ribbon cable, which is very, very difficult. As you can see, I've already taken this mouse apart a couple times. You can see how badly damaged the ribbon cable is here. It's very, very difficult to do, and especially the way it's mounted into the board as well, it's also very complicated to get it in. So it's just overall a very tricky thing to do. So I'm going to walk you guys how to do this the easier way. So what's going to happen is that this board has to sit like this in the shell, so we need to orient it as so. So what's going to happen is we have to put this piece back into the board where the blue tape is facing the left side of the mouse. So what we're going to do is we're basically just going to gently fill this cable into this little hole here. We're just going to gently line it up. Now, once we get it roughly seated, you want to grab the top and the bottom, and as best you can, push it into the connector. Try not to kink the cable if you can. Don't grab it from the sides because you'll damage it. So just gently push in from the top. You just want to put as much pressure onto the sides of the cable as you can. Now, once you get it roughly seated like this should be good to go. At this point, I'd recommend turning the mouse on and just making sure that these work. Make sure your DPI buttons work. If they don't work, the cable isn't seated all the way through. So if it doesn't work, just take the cable out and reseat it again. But if you check it and it works, then you're good to go. Now, again, this is the hardest part of this entire repair because this cable should absolutely be a clip connector like this one here. I genuinely don't understand why they did a force connector here. If it was flipped to where it was a force connector on this side and a clip on this side, it'd be much better. I just don't understand why they did this. But regardless, that's how you get it reseated. Now we have the fun job of trying to get this into the top shell. All right, now what we're going to do for this part is going to be pretty sketch, but just bear with me. This is a lot easier than putting this board in and then trying to get it into this little connector because it's next to impossible. So what you're going to do is get something to just brace this side of the board against something. I just use the screws like this. And then what you're going to do, I'll zoom in here for you guys. What you want to do is you want to take this connector and you want to go ahead and seat it into the main board. Now, you may have to readjust this a couple times to get this to happen, but you want to basically just do this in a way where you can get this PCB into place without having to remove it from the connector. Again, this is very sketchy, but once you get into place, it will kind of work. So once you get it roughly into place like this, you can go ahead, you can put in your screws. Once that's seated in, now you can go ahead and put the shell together. Now you can see why I did it this way, because if you're going to try and put this PCB in and then try and wiggle this cable in with the top shell on, it's extremely difficult to do so. So that's why I recommend doing it the other way. Again, it is a little sketchy with how you have to kind of brace the main board up like this while you put the piece in, but it does work. Now what you can do is you can go ahead and put the shell back together. Now the only really notable thing about this you have to worry about is at the back there is that little connector. So you can see here there's that little lip here and there is a connector here. So what you want to do is you basically just want to line up the mouse as best you can along all the sides, and then once it's roughly into place, I'd recommend pushing on the sides first to clip those into place, and then lastly do the back and just run your finger along the sides to make sure there's no loose areas. If it's a little loose up at the top, don't worry about that. That's because the anchor screws aren't in yet. We'll fix that in a minute. But as long as there's no large gaps along the side of the mouse, you are good to go. And then lastly, you can go ahead and put back in your 4 base screws on the unit. Alrighty, and then once your base screws are in, you just go around the side of the mouse and make sure the top and the bottom shell are making a good connection. You'll notice here at the top they're a lot closer than they were before because the anchor screws are on there. But if everything is seated together fine, then you are good to go and you've successfully completed your teardown of the VANCER groove. Overall, a surprisingly serviceable mouse. The only downside to this mouse, in my opinion, of course, is that ribbon cable connector. It is very annoying to have and having to do this weird like half open shell surgery kind of thing to get the thing back into place. But aside from that, they're actually a surprisingly serviceable unit. I do like the battery brace. That is a really nice attention to detail to preventing the battery from coming loose over time. And I really do like the extra anchoring screws in the top and bottom of the shell because it does make the mouse feel very rigid and reduces any like creaking or flexing issues, which is a really, really nice attention to detail. But overall, a fairly well constructed mouse. Again, the only downside is that ribbon connector. But that is going to be everything for today's teardown. Thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions about the teardown, feel free to leave a comment down below. I'll do my best to help you out as best I can. If you enjoyed the teardown, you'd like to see more videos like this, you can subscribe to the channel. I do teardowns like this on all the mice I cover here on the channel. So if you want to see how more mice nicely built on the inside, be sure to drop a sub. If you'd like to help support the channel, you can do so by becoming a member here on YouTube. That is the best way to directly support the channel. You can also help support the channel by using my affiliate links over at Lethal Gaming Gear, Mac Keys, and Raven mouse pads, and a couple other places to help save some money on your orders and support the channel that way. But that is everything for today's teardown of the VANCER Groove. Thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Peace.